And we're back. So some time has passed and I've been doing a little bit of work on this before work and after work. But it's time to try and get this ECU installed and at least get it powered up today. Fingers crossed. So let me give you a rundown on what I've done so far. Because my knowledge is, well, because I got a lot of knowledge around the PT CAN bus and getting the shifters to work, that's where I started. So we have the shifter plugged in and it's actually working. Let me show you where we have gotten to with this. So we have the Howl loom, which is this loom here, plugged into the factory SMG shifter connector. Something to note with this, on the early versions of the Howl loom, I know they're actually using these wires in here to pick up CAN bus from the DME box in the engine bay. They don't do that anymore. You now need to actually connect the loom, this loom directly to CAN bus, which you would have seen in the last video. And I assume they're doing that because there's no twisted pairs in here. So while you can sort of piggyback CAN bus through this harness, which is essentially not used anymore, but yeah, obviously not being a twisted pair, that's not going to be a very solid connection for the CAN bus. So they don't do that anymore, but that does make a little bit more work because you need to connect this directly to PT CAN. Something to note with this is essentially just powering the shifter. So it's got its main 12 volt power supply, a ignition source, and a ground. It's not really doing a lot, this connector, but it does save a few wires when it comes to getting it working. You can't actually see them at the moment, but the PT CAN wires actually go down through under the carpet, and then I'm actually connecting to the seats because, of course, the BMW seats are connected to the powertrain CAN. That is probably the easiest place that I could think of to get the CAN bus, but there's actually a light control module just in the footwell. So if you happen to have a vehicle that doesn't have CAN bus in the seats, you can connect to CAN bus just above the brake pedal. Yeah, but to me, this was easier than taking the dashboard apart. So one thing with the loom, it has got CAN bus coming out and coming back in. So it's it keeps the CAN bus loop system going. I'll be honest, I don't normally use the loops when I'm doing CAN bus. I just tap in and piggyback and it normally works fine, but this is the proper way to inject CAN bus into something. You can see this here. This is the program switch connector. Now you will also notice we now have an extra grey wire from the original SMG harness. The E92 M3 shifters, they're actually set up to get the interior illumination signal over CAN bus. Now this is something we've noticed doing the 8HP swaps over the years. E-series 8HPs do not have illumination on the CAN bus, on the PT CAN. So there's no signal on the CAN bus to tell the shifter how bright to make the backlight. What we normally do on those systems, we run an external wire to power up the 8HP backlight. Now, on an E-series DCT, those cars did have CAN bus backlight signals. This car doesn't have the data on the CAN bus to do the backlight for the DCT shifter. This is something that I found out last week. So what I've done is complicate things. Now, in that first video, you saw that I was going to essentially rewire the SMG knob to connect to the DCT shifter and power my LEDs and hope that it was going to all work. Well, ultimately it didn't. We have managed to get reverse, neutral, drive. Those lights do work, but I couldn't get the backlight to work, and it's because this vehicle is not sending out the CAN bus backlight information. So what I've done for backlight, you might be able to see it here. This is the SMG shifter connector, and we're powering the backlight and earthing the backlight straight to the car. So it's a bit of a hack job, but it was the only way to get the SMG knob to have illumination working and fading and dimming like the factory car. But that now has rear illumination. That's all good. And yeah, it was essentially the same thing that we had to do with the program switch. So the program switch down the bottom there, that also has illuminations. And when you adjust your interior illumination here, everything dims and brightens and everything looks like it should look. So it's a bit of a mess around to get the SMG shift knob on the DCT shifter illuminating and appearing factory. I want it to appear correct. So anyway, that's how I've had to do it. So I should just clarify, if I was using the DCT shift knob on the DCT shifter, we would still have that backlight issue because this car is not sending out the backlight on CAN bus. Now, the later models, potentially an LCI E60 M5 or the later M6s, maybe they do have that CAN bus data for the backlight, but yeah, essentially the early ones, they definitely do not. So just be aware, if you're using a DCT shift knob or whatever shift knob you're using, you're gonna have to make sure that you can get the backlight to work. If you want it to work. Some people probably don't care about it, but it was something I wanted to do. let's go and have a look at the engine bay. So we'll start with the oil pressure switch and the banjo fitting. So you can see we now have a spacer which is spacing the original S85 oil pressure switch up, and then an oil line coming off a banjo fitting. That is a braided line which is tucked up behind the headlight. It comes up, you can't actually see it, but it's just under here, and then it comes around into the engine bay here. This is going to have to be P-clamped up out the way so it's not rubbing or touching on anything. And we then have the sensor here. Now this is a Bosch pressure and temperature sensor. We're only using the pressure side. They're a nice little sensor, but that is what Gareth Howell supplied. And then obviously we've got the loom here. Again, it's just tucked under the radio support panel. We're going to have to do some proper securing of that shortly. You can see it here, and then it comes round under the headlight, up under here. Now this car is actually fitted with an aftermarket parking sensor. Probably don't need it in this day and age, but it's interesting driving down the highway, getting told that K-band is everywhere. I kind of like it, a little bit of nostalgia. Oh, while we're here, that is the DCT oil cooler. I don't think I've shown you guys that yet, but we have solid mounted that cooler there, and hopefully it doesn't cause any issues with the radiator. I'm sure it won't, but it is quite a large cooler. I'd rather use a large cooler than not enough cooler. Back to the wiring. It's coming up and around and then under here, following that aftermarket parking sensor wiring that's already tapped into the DME box. If I didn't have that other wiring there, I don't like how messy it looks, but I'm not going to redo it. I would like this oil pressure sensor wire to come up, go through this grommet here, and then get into the DME box that way, instead of coming across and going through this grommet. However, this wire that's been supplied by Gareth is not long enough to come this way and around, so it does need the more direct route. That's going to be fine, and we'll get a DT3 put on there to connect to the other harness. While we're here, the DME box, you can see it's all empty. In fact, this is that aftermarket parking sensor wiring. Annoyingly, they just coiled up and put it in the DME box, and then it goes down through the fan return hole. I'm going to use the fan return hole to get the Ethernet cable for the Syvecs into the cabin. It looks like it's gonna fit, but we'll find out shortly. And I have got the frame from the original DME out at the moment. In fact, let's have a quick look at that frame before we talk about the NOx sensors. So this is something that I did on the N54 install as well, but essentially we're just going to try and remove this part of the webbing here. So essentially I will start some cuts and we'll try and break away as much as we can. Just get a cut there, and we'll also cut it at this point and that point, and then with another pair of stronger needle nose pliers you can just break it away. Well, I'll try and break as much away as I can because it gets noisy otherwise, but yeah, you can see there, you can just sort of twist it out and remove that webbing. Now this does mean that if the car ever wants to go back to a standard DME, it can't. Well, the DME will be loose, but you could just replace this part, and I'm fairly confident this part is the same for non-M cars. All of the E-Series DMEs mounts the same, so let's try and break away a bit more. And there we go. Okay, so that's as much as I can get away by breaking it off. That's where the multi-tool comes in, and we'll remove a little bit more, make a lot of noise. And that's probably the quickest way to get rid of that. Now, what I might just do is give that a little file or a sand just to make sure it's not going to scratch the howl. But that's essentially what we need to do. And then this will actually slide in the DME box when I remove that other piece. And we'll try again. There it is. So it will now slide in, and I think it will actually go down and lock in. That's it. So we've now got the HAL supported in the original DME frame. So we ended up having to cut a little bit out the bottom as well to get clearance for the 24-pin connector down the bottom. But that now, wherever that's gone, that now plugs into there, locks in, and the ECU is fully encapsulated in the factory housing, and it's nice and tight. So we'll leave that there for now. Next, we need to get the wiring done for the pressure switch. So I did get a pin out from Gareth, and the way I'm going to connect that pressure switch is basically into that 26-pin connector. So I have the pinouts that we need, and basically pin 3 is analog on the DT, pin 2 is the signal wire, and pin 1 is 5 volts. So let's get it into the DME box. And I'm going to cut off these pins for now, because these are for the BMW connector, which I'm not going to connect into for this. And we already have a hole in this grommet, so we will slide it through there, hopefully. Oh, nice. Not too much hassle to get that through. And then that grommet can go back down. In case I forget to mention it later on, I do need to get the proper grommet for the DCT harness. The E90 grommets are different to the E60, so I'll have to grab an E60 and basically run the DCT harness through that. Okay, so that's now here. We will get this one stripped down and we'll get it put into the DT connector. Okay, so we have those three there. I'll strip that off, ready to go in the DT pin. So I am just using DT open barrel crimps, because that's all I've got at home. Okay, so we have those pinned in, and get the connector, just check the wiring. So 3 is ground, 2 is signal, 5 volt is pin 1. And with that confirmed, we can go, so we can go pin 1 on the right, which is 5 volts. So that goes in there. Like so. The signal wire is pin 2. If it'll fit. And then the last one to go in is the ground. Let me try and put the locator in. That's the wrong one. And we'll put the locator in. Okay. So that's there, and make sure we plug in. It's tight, but that is together. And ground going to, double check, ground should go to pin 3. Pin 3. Okay, we're good. So that is now wired for the oil pressure sensor. The next thing we need to do while we've got this wire is basically see if we can poke it down through this hole and grab it from the inside. Hopefully it's not too bad to get. So we have removed the, actually I'll go wide. We've removed this little kick panel here, and you can see some light coming through up there. that is actually a little cavity that goes straight into the DME box. And we have poked the Syvecs Ethernet cable through, and it's now in the cabin. I think I'm going to run this across the back and then down to here, and I'll just have a little loop coming out here that I can tuck under the seat when we're not using it. But I think that's going to be the easiest way to get connection to the Syvecs from inside the cabin. This is the first time I've had this down, and there's a lot of aftermarket stuff in this car which I didn't really know about. We've got some sort of ancient Bluetooth module with an Android logo. If anybody knows what that is, let me know. I didn't know that was in the car, or what that box does. And yeah, I don't know. I think I'm going to put an MBT unit in this. I might have to work out what all this stuff is powering and do a bit of a cleanup. I think a lot of this is the parking sensors. Oh, it's a bit messy. Anyway, problem for another day. Ethernet cable is through from the box. So that means we can start packing the Syvecs into here, get all that side of it sorted, and move on to the knock sensors. Okay, so we have the oil pressure sensor wire going down under this cage, which has got to get screwed in to be solid. And we'll just make sure everything's going to connect first. When I was doing this with my Max ECU and the E92, I remember I had this in and out about 10 times trying to make it all work, but I think I've covered all my bases this time. This can then be plugged into here, slid down, and hopefully we can pull it all out the way as it goes down. So that's going to sit down there. So that's actually bottoming out on the 24-pin connector down the bottom. That is as low as it's going to go, but hopefully that comes in. My only concern is that we don't top out on the box. I think we're going to be okay. I feel like it should maybe go down another 2 or 3 mil, but hopefully we'll have clearance to the lid. That was the big issue with the Max ECU. Yeah, that's on the bottom. That's as low as this is going to go. So it must be fine, because obviously this is in other cars. But yeah, on the Max ECU I had issues where my factory DME connectors were hitting the top of the lid. Alright, so that's in. That can be connected. I'm not going to connect it yet because we've got too many wires loose. But I do kind of want to power it up and do a test before I put it all back together for the final fitment, in case we need to make any adjustments. Okay, unfortunately I wasn't filming because I didn't think in a million years it would connect straight away. This whole Ethernet connection confuses me. But we are connected to the Syvecs, and it has come up with we strongly recommend 2 brake pressure sensors for cruise control. The seat is going crazy. That'll be because the seat's automatic bolsters, they get their signals from the lateral G sensor that the factory ECU normally connects to. So I'm going to guess there's an issue with the lateral sensor information. But we are essentially connected. Now, this was just a power up to make sure really that this wire works before I put the interior back together. Obviously we haven't got park up there, but that's because this won't display park. None of the car coding has been done yet. I think I'm just going to go through, just check a few things that I can check, and slowly start putting the car back together. I guess we've got to do the knock sensors first. Let's get on to the knock sensors. Yeah. More tricks up my sleeve. Okay, so we've removed this top cover, which that actually took quite a long time. This it's now 20-year-old plastic. I didn't want to break any of the clips. I managed to get that off without breaking anything, which is amazing. And I managed to feed the knock sensor wiring, which is the 2 wires here, and the new wiring for the aftermarket idle motor, if we end up going that way, through here, which was a bit nerve-wracking, but we managed to get it through without causing any damage to this, and it wasn't too bad poking it through. But we've got that going through the factory loom, so that'll all tuck nicely and you won't know it's there. I can put the plastic cover back on, and maybe you can see down in there, but we have one knock sensor fitted there. If it's going to focus, the wire comes up. I've just got it zip tied to this sensor just to keep it away from the actuator arm, and then we've got the other one just down in here, and its wire tucks through, goes between the 2 throttle body motors and joins this one up here. So the knock sensor wiring is done, and we've got the wiring for the aftermarket idle motor if we decide to use it, hidden in here. All right, I'll put that cover back on, replace that zip tie up in that corner, and then we can pin it into the DME. We're getting close. So one mistake I have made, annoyingly, all of the other wires are nicely labeled at the DME end. So you can see we've got 12 volt signal and signal for the idle motor. The wires for the oil pressure sensor were the same. This, you can just see the sheathing where this is basically one pair and this is the other pair just in here. But there's no labeling on these, so I don't know if these are bank 1 or bank 2, and it's really important that we get them around the right way, because you can see, hopefully you can see there, but bank 2 on this side of the engine, bank 1 on that side of the engine, essentially they're going to be picking up the detonation or the knock levels in this bank, and then this one is picking up this bank. The ECU is designed so that it will only pay attention to the knock that bank 2 sensor should be picking up during a possible knock event. So if you get them back to front, it'll just pick up less knock. The ECU won't know that they're on the wrong side. So it is really important to check it. We're now going to have to do a continuity test, and I guess that'll let us know if we're around the right way. Just make sure we are. Can you make some beeps? That should beep. Okay, so I've got that going on to one side. The knock sensors are not polarity sensitive, but you do need to... Okay, so this is bank 2. Bank 2, let's keep it there. Alright. Yeah, they're not polarity sensitive, the knock sensors, but you do, again, just need to make sure the bank 1 is connected to bank 1 and bank 2 is connected to bank 2. Now that we know that this is bank 2, we need to get into the DME connector. Now, the knock sensors pin into this 40-pin connector here, so we'll just remove it from this connector, hopefully without too much faffery. There it is. So in this, I think it's 40 or 44 pin, but we've got 2 unused pins, or 2 pairs of unused pins. We've got 15 and 14 and 2 and 3. So I'm just going to triple check which one is bank 1 and which one is bank 2, and we'll get them wired in. So I have confirmed pins 2 and 3 are for bank 1, and yep, you see, hopefully you guys can see on the camera, but we have pin 1 there. So this is bank 1, and we will feed these into the factory DME. How guys have used some decent wiring, it's bloody solid. So that's bank 1. If we can squeeze them in. Nice. And then bank 2 is 14 and 15. Which are these 2 up here? Oh. Say are tight. See if we can pull them in. Yeah, the gauge wiring here is just slightly thicker. That one clipped. Okay. So they are both now clipped in. Alright, so this is where it all gets a bit messy because we have a massive bundle of wires, but hopefully when we get it all down and in, it will be okay. That can go back together. We connect this side to the HAL ECU first. That one is in, and then that one is in there. So that can curl down like that. That's nice. That can slide down. And this is the wiring for the aftermarket idle motor, which we're not using yet. I'll just tidy it up a little bit. And we'll tuck it down. We'll go under. Keep it outside as much as possible. All right. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to put that back in. How does that go? It goes like that. Cool. Grommets go down. That will be tight. I think I did mention it earlier, but I've got to change this grommet out. That's the E92 DCT grommet. I'm going to have to get an SMG one. I foolishly sold my old one with the SMG that I sold. I do have some spare E71, so hopefully they'll be fine, but that's not going to be watertight. Not that there should be much water up in this area, but it is something that I am aware of. We don't want any water ruining a $10,000 ECU. That's recording. And I'll just make sure the cover's gonna sit down. Oh, I think we're good. Let's go back a little bit. Yes, okay, that cover's gonna go on nicely. In fact, I gotta remember where these bolts are, and we might screw that back down. Yeah, probably better than not having the lid on, but I need to change that grommet because I can see it's not watertight. So the NOx sensors are connected. The Syvecs is now sealed away, almost watertight in the DME box, and it's time to get on to the setup side in regards to software stuff. So we still need to do a fair bit of configuration, or at least clarify a lot of the calibration and configuration on the Syvecs side, which we'll get to shortly. But before I do too much with the Syvecs and get tempted to try and start it up, we do need to see what we can sort out on the car coding side. So when I spoke to Gareth originally about doing this, he did say he has a guy that can remote in and do all this. I'm fairly confident we'll be able to get it sorted, and I thought I'd share with you guys what I do on the coding side to get it working. And this may be relevant to other types of swaps as well. It's not something I've done before. I'm essentially going to go through as many of the modules that I can go through that may be relevant to transmission operation. So cluster, CAS, all that sort of stuff. See what factory coding options we have there and see the best way we can set them up to be happy with the DCT. On that note as well, we are going to be using the Beamer Geeks cable. If you're doing this for the first time, try and get a hold of one of these cables. Some of the cheaper K and D-CAN cables from eBay are really good at bricking modules. There's something different with the Eddy Bias library that's on them, but go with the Beamer Geeks cable. It's the best way to have the least amount of problems. We're going to be using BMW standard tools. Now you can do coding with other tools such as Pro Tools, which works well with that cable as well. I don't have Pro Tools. I've always done it with the standard tools. So that's what you're going to see me using. But yeah, this can be done with some aftermarket tools as well. Oh, also, the interior is all back together now. So we've got the center console all back in, all of the trim panels, not that you can see are there. We've still got the cable coming through for the Syvecs. And nicely, we can actually keep the cable in that little net down there. I don't know. I think I'll leave it there for now. All right, let me get my laptop fired up and see what we can connect to on this car. So it's always hard filming laptop screens because of all the reflections, but hopefully you can see it. This was me playing with the calibration that Gareth Howell sent through. Just trying to get my head around the Syvecs software a bit. We'll talk about what I've done with that a bit later on. So we are going to be using BMW standard tools.
And we're going to start off with a tool called NCS Expert. So this was, I'm not sure if it's developed by BMW or where it's come from, but essentially we're going to use it to read a module's coding and then see if we can edit that coding data. So actually we'll go key on. I noticed the tacho didn't do a tacho sweep, which it was doing before. Oh, there it is. Now it's doing the tacho sweeps. Maybe the Syvecs was still asleep. All right. Load profile. I'm going to use manipulation profile because we're going to be changing some stuff. Start. Let's go to chassis. We have an E60. We're going to select the CAS. And immediately not happy. Okay, so I suspect this will be the problem. Annoyingly, when you switch cables and laptops reboot, every now and again, the latency for the USB, for the KCAN cable jumps up to 16. We'll set that back to 1. Click OK. OK, don't make me restart. That's good. All right, we'll go back to NCS Expert. We'll go back and we'll start from scratch. So something that I do on the E90s is it going to read properly? Yes. Okay, we've got communication. You don't have the ignition in the on position, just have it on the first click. But you can see here, it's read the vehicle order, so now it will know which modules we can access. So we're going to process an ECU. First one, the one I'm most interested in is the combi. So we'll select combi and then we're going to, it is set to coding, but we're going to read the ECU. Coding active, coding ended. So that should have pulled, well, actually there, you can see it there, that's all the coding data from the combi. Now if we go back to my main desktop, and now we're going to open NCS Dummy, it's going to read that coding file and basically translate it into something that makes sense to us. We've got to select E60. One thing I am semi-concerned for, actually, yeah, open that. I'm not sure if my Dayton files are going to have the E60 modules, so we might have to update them shortly. Is it going to find the combi? Okay, it has. So these are all our combi options. Instead of going through everything, because there's a lot of options, I'm going to search for SMG. So we'll see where combi options are set to. Okay, there's nothing for SMG. Interesting. Let's see if DCT. Nothing for DCT. Let's check for transmission. Sweet. Okay, so you can see here that we can either have an automatic, sports automatic, a sports sequential, or a manual. So this Getriebe Art, I believe it is the way that it describes or the way that it displays the gear position data on the cluster. That's going to need to be left as sports sequential. I know that SMGs and DCTs transmit the gear position the same way, as do, this is also a relevant thing here, the motorsport option. Well, let's see if transmission comes up again. A live counter for electronic transmission, that is fine. That means it monitors the electronic transmission. Yeah, it's monitoring the electronic transmission. BMW sometimes call electronic transmissions EGS. So they're the only options for SMG. Interesting. I'm gonna, just for the sake of it, we're gonna set it to automatic, and I wanna see if it changes the way it displays. So we're going to export this, then we can go back to here, we'll change the job, because essentially we don't have park at the moment. And if we execute, that's the wrong job, we want Coderin, execute this, the cluster should flicker. There it is. So that coding has been accepted by the cluster. And we'll turn the car on. I just want to see how it displays here. Okay, we still don't get a park. That's okay. Oh, we've obviously got a lot of errors still as well. All right, so that did not give me a park. I was hoping to see park. Let's go back. Okay, so going through everything on the cluster, I can't see anything that is going to be relevant to the DCT. Gareth did tell me initially that you can code the clusters as a DCT. I think he might be a little bit confused. You can't. It looks like they can only be coded for an SMG with motorsport display. You can change the coding to non-motorsport, which basically makes all the gear positions much smaller, and that does show P. I was just testing it, but I want the big gear display. I don't care if we can't see when we're in park. That is fine. And yeah, this is why this is open again. If I put it back here, that puts the park lock on, and then the transmission has an error. But let's go back to neutral. We are going to, the only other thing I'm going to change in the cluster for now is the condition-based service status for the engine oil, because we're not going to be able to reset the engine oil service now that we don't have the factory DME. That is something that happened through the factory DME. So we're going to turn off the reminders for engine oil because they will get annoying. But yeah, aside from that, we're going to leave that like that for now. And we'll change job to coder and execute. Actually, I've got to go back to this position. Coding active. Coding ended. Ooh, you know what? Because I've removed the brake pad wear sensors, I should probably sort them out as well. And you can see we're transmission not in P. We'll put that back into park, so that stays there. That gets rid of that error. We'll go key on quickly. Just make sure nothing is freaking out. Coolant level. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so I think that's going to be everything we need to do in the combi. So let's go and change the ECU. And then we'll go to... Okay, so we're going to go through the options for the CAS unit. Now, this car has a CAS too. It's a very early one. This is an E60 with an actual key. In fact, there weren't many M's that had the keys, but I've read the CAS the same way we just read the cluster. And we're going to search for everything that relates to transmission. So the first one that's come up is gear count. We're going to leave it set as a 7-speed because it is a 7-speed. The transmission type, oh, there it is. So we can actually set it as a DKG. That's interesting. So this CAS 2, which come out long before DCTs ever did, you can actually code as a DKG. So BMW was ready. They were ready to put them in these cars. So the next one that transmission brings up is engine start only with transmission in neutral or park. That is a normal thing. Evaluate the transmission neutral signal from electronic transmission. So it's going to check that the DCT TCU says it's in park or neutral before it tries to start, and it gets that signal from the CAN bus. Cool. On some E-series transmissions, there's actually a wire that goes to the CAS to tell the CAS the transmission is in park or neutral, but this is going to do it over CAN bus. This is awesome. Engine switch off with transmission park and neutral. Okay, that's cool, so you can turn it off in gear. Electric immobilizer system for electric transmission control. That is not active. That's good. And then we're back to transmission gear count. So the only thing we're changing in this one is we're actually going to set the CAS to DCT. We will export that. And we're on one click. That's fine. Back to here. And we want to change the job to Coderin and write that to the CAS. So the CAS actually powers everything, so it's pretty normal for everything to shut down when you do that with the CAS. We have to find out why the airbag light is on. It's probably because I've had the battery off a few times. Okay, cool, and we've got to get rid of this brake pad warning. That is because of the brake pad wear sensors are not currently fitted. All right, we'll go key off, key back on. Nice. Okay, cool. I reckon the last module I'm going to check is the light control module, which I'll go and do now. So the reason I want to check the light module is for the reverse lights. When you do a DCT swap on an E-series, well, like an E90, sorry, or even when you put an 8-speed in a 90, you have got to set up reverse light signals because, again, on a factory 6-speed car, it uses an actual switch to tell the FRM in an E90 that we want to go into reverse, we want to turn the reverse lights on. On this E60, the reverse signal directly from switch is not active, so it's not using a reverse switch to tell it it's in reverse. And the only other time it comes up is reverse signal from light module. So it's not actually mentioned in any other places in the light module, so I don't think I'm going to change anything. Realistically, so far, all I've changed is the CAS. I think that's it. So before I go through and actually try and start the car and finish setting up the Syvecs, I just want to see what errors are current in the vehicle. Like I said, I was confused about the airbag light. I don't know why it's here, but just going through everything. Okay, we've got a lot of errors for no communication with the DME because the DME is not there. So we've got no communication possible with DME. We have the brake pad wear sensor issues because I've got to sort them out from when the brakes went on. The electronic damper control is not waking up, so we need to work out what's going on there, although the EDC light does do this. So this could be a result of a missing message. EDC voltage terminal, light module indicator left. Oh, this thing's got LED indicators in the guards, so that'll be why those errors are there. They could be coded out, but doesn't really matter. We have the belt tensioner resistance firing circuit front right too low. Okay, so I have had the airbag, I did have the seat disconnected. I wonder if it's not connected properly. I'm going to have to check the airbag. Ooh, that might be my fault that we're getting the airbag light. Okay, we will check that, or maybe it stored the error from when I had the seat disconnected. The aux sensor, that is a sensor that goes in the engine bay to test pollution from memory. We've got park distance control wire. That's because the front bumper is no longer off. The CCC had a control unit for voltage. That's probably because the battery's been disconnected. The combi is not happy because the DME is not sending the correct messages. No message to the head-up display, also likely because of that. We have a head-up display KCAN communication fault. The head-up display is working, so these could be historic codes as well. GWS failure function lighting. That'll be the issue with the factory DCT shifter doesn't get the right signals. Or is it because I've got the lights disconnected? We'll see. The supply voltage is too low to the GWS. We'll see if that goes away. The DSC is not happy because the DME is not there. Okay, the DSC is not happy because the light module's not there. Okay, a lot of these faults may just go. In fact, let's delete the faults and we'll see what comes back. You can see it is communicating with all of the modules. So with the errors deleted, we've gone from 35 down to 7, so we'll see what she's still not happy about. We have no communication possible with engine electronics. Okay, the DME is not there. We've got the 2 brake pad errors. We are getting a PT CAN communication error on the ZGM SGM, which I think is the indicator stalk. Interesting. We have that sensor that's not plugged in the engine bay. The DCT shifter is giving us an error for the lighting, but I think I might be able to trick that. And we've got a no message for the LCD light intensity from the PT CAN. That's because this shifter is looking for that light message to tell us how bright it is, which I think I already knew. I think I mentioned it earlier that that's not going to work. So that's not too bad. That's not too many errors that could have potentially turned into a bit of a nightmare. I'm going to... What are we going to do? Is the airbag light gone? I think the airbag light's gone. Is the airbag light gone? I'm not sure. Front passenger airbags are faulty. All right. All right. And we're down to just these errors. So the airbag error was being caused by a loose connection in the seat, which I have now fixed. So now we only got the brake pad error, the airbag light goes off. Yes, I'm not strapped in. We are getting there. I do think it's funny, this GWS failure function lighting on an E90, that error will come up on the dash cluster and you'll actually get a warning light. But obviously this dash cluster isn't programmed to respond to that error. So it becomes a hidden error, essentially. Good or bad, I'm not sure. But yeah, I reckon we'll be able to get rid of this GWS failure function lighting by fitting some LEDs and just putting an LED essentially on the shifter if I want to hide it. But the only way to get rid of this PT CAN from instrument cluster error is going to be to transmit that message that the shifter is looking for on the PT CAN. Okay. So I think that's all we're going to do in ISTA. I'm pretty happy with regards to where fault codes are. I think it's Syvecs next. Actually, the next thing we're going to do is flash the DCT. Now this does take about 10 minutes. I'm going to use the software DCT Quick Flash. I can do this with normal WinKFP software, but I find Quick Flash is a little bit easier. So let's see if we can identify the transmission. Warning, TCU version not recognized. Do you want a continuous GS40? Okay, that's mildly concerning. Now I have got a few concerns with using this, because if you do this with the max ECU, whilst the max ECU is connecting to the DCT for telemetry data, you can run into some issues. Okay, it has identified the TCU. It has not identified the firmware. I'm just going to identify it again. Interesting. See if something like the Syvecs, yeah, okay. So as soon as I turn the ignition off, it identifies that transmission immediately. That is going to be probably because the Syvecs is causing an issue with the CAN bus. But you can see it's read the VIN number from the original car that it was connected to. GS40 is the code, the hardware identifier. We've got the firmware. It's got the M3 USA software. But we need to change the final drive. So to do that is a little bit more difficult than I remember. Okay, so the way to do this normally, we would flash the M3 flash as the GTS. You can see we've got an option for GTS to CRT. I have no idea what that is. I might do some Googling on that, but we've basically got the GTS flash. Now, normally we'd click flash, it would put the GTS flash onto the transmission. And if we have it set to save bin as, once it's actually written the flash, you'll be then given a bin file. Now, what you can do then is if we identify the transmission, actually, let's go parameters. So there we have, it's just finished the flash and it's created this file. So we'll save that. And now, hopefully, I can load the bin. Okay, it's pulled all the data out of it. So we've got the launch RPM, pardon me, the launch RPM minimum, the launch RPM maximum, the launch RPM max. Oh, I get it. So launch RPM is here. The maximum is 4,000 RPM. Launch RPM no stalk, 1200. Okay, I think that's to do with you can change your launch RPM. We'll leave all that as it is, but what we're going to change is the diff ratio. So 3.63. In fact, I had that up before and I've already forgotten it. It is 3.62. 3.62. It's really important to set the rear diff ratio because DCT tuned, we will call it 3.62 diff. The reason it's really important is because the DCT uses the wheel speed data to calculate clutch behavior, or it uses the wheel speed data of the car to calculate gear completion. That's probably a better way to put it. So if it doesn't have an accurate diff ratio, the DCT doesn't know whether it's completed the shift or not. So now we have XDF base files, DCT tuned, 3.62 diff, and actually let's identify first. We want to make sure it's identified. Yeah, it has. Okay, I'm going to load the file that's got the 3.62 diff and flash that one. So take that one, that last one took 8 minutes to go through. We'll leave this to go through with the corrected diff ratio right now. I have just noticed this one's going really fast, so it's not doing a full write this time. That's handy. So we'll hang on. We'll wait. Come on, 1 minute. Actually, just while that flash is going through, the other video has obviously gone live, and it was funny. So I said I'm going to probably leave, well, I'm probably going to change the diff, but I'll leave this diff in for a little while because I want to see what it's like. And I had two people contact me, both that have run a DCT with a 3.62 diff. One person said, I'll hate it, I need to put the 3.15 in. And the other one said, I'm going to love having the 3.62 diff, it's much better. So it'll be interesting to see what it does actually drive like. And that flash is now finished. Okay, cool. So we will go key off. I've still got my screwdriver in there, but we'll just make sure that with it in neutral, so that puts the DCT into neutral. We getting any errors? No. However, the DCT is dead. Okay. Sometimes this happens when you flash it. Just give it a few seconds for it to go to sleep. Probably not enough seconds, but we'll try again. Yes, okay, we've got neutral. And we'll see if we get a transmission error up here. It's happy, it's getting the signals from the DCT. And if we put it back into park, that goes away. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, everything is communicating as it should. Okay, I think that's enough messing around with that. Now we can get on to the Syvecs stuff. So in the Syvecs, for the starting, what I ended up doing, we actually have this engine enable function. So I've got it set, enable engine oil pressure threshold. So it's basically, this axis here is coolant temp, and then this axis is millibar of oil pressure. And you can see there, I've got it set so it won't start until we have 1000 millibar, 100 kPa, 15 psi of oil pressure. And what that allows me to do is basically keep cranking the engine until we get oil pressure. And that's what it's doing. One thing that is a little bit sucky, when you crank the car, the Syvecs does lose power. But we'll do it one more time. I'll show you it going into gear. And it will crank for a little while. So that's just building up oil pressure, and I can reduce that threshold later. But if we go, we're in park, if I go like that, we go to neutral, we can go into gear, and yeah, that all works. And we'll go back to neutral, and then to reverse. Cool. I'm not going to try and actually move because I need to get oil in it. And that, the weird pump noise, I need to get the power steering bled, turn it off. But yeah, she runs. Bugger. Well, we'll turn that off. Oh, God damn it. I'll just disable that. Disabled. I should stay off. Yep, we're good. Well, I'll give you a bit of an update. So, what I was hoping to take like 2 or 3 hours installing this ECU is about out to 4 days. But this is kind of what happens. Managed to start the car up. Got 700 millibar of oil pressure in the line somehow. We have 2 issues with the vehicle. The bank 2 O2 sensor is not working properly. It just reads 5 lambda or half a lambda. So that is not working properly. That's an easy fix, almost expected. It's often when you remove an O2 sensor, it might get knocked or banged and they do go faulty, but that sucks nonetheless. Anyway, need to change the O2 sensor, and my engine fan is not working, but it starts. It does start. It starts and runs. So I've run it for about a minute all up. It had a little bit of a power steering whine. I did put it into gear, and it drove forwards and drove backwards. Well, creep forwards, creep backwards. I need to check the DCT oil level when it's running. But to do that, I need to leave it running for a few minutes, and I don't want to do that until I know all the coolant's bled. I'm bleeding the coolant without a thermofan. I don't know. So I think I'm going to call it here for today and get this video out. The Syvecs is sort of working. The biggest issue with the Syvecs currently is the cruise control stalk. The CAN bus profile, or the CAN bus message that's being sent on this vehicle, is not the same as my E92. I went and checked all that. If I send my E92 cruise stalk messages, the Syvecs receives them properly. So, this is the message for the set button. And you can see here, if I click it, we go up to 3, 4, 5. And if I change it to the down message on my little sniffer thing, go down, 3, 2. So Syvecs is receiving the CAN, it's just the CAN messages are not set correctly. We'll see what the guys in the UK can do about that. In the meantime, I think I need to get a thermofan for an E60 M5. I can't believe it's died. Typical. Just my luck. All right, guys, thank you for watching. If you've got any questions about it, hit me up in the comments below. I'm trying to document as much as I can. I hope the point of view video footage with my new point of view camera is not too weird. But
But yeah, obviously once I've got a bit more of a solution, once I can leave the engine running for a long time, you guys will have an update as well.